I was raised to be proud of who I am and to know where I come from, to be proud to be an Indigenous person in this country. There were times in my life that were more challenging in terms of being an Indigenous person and facing systemic racism and facing challenges because of who I am and where I come from. I mean, I can remember, and I talked to my mom about this very recently, I can remember when I was in elementary school in her grade 3 class and having health people come and a dentist office individuals come and take myself and my Indigenous classmates, of which there were probably 4 or 5 of us, away to get our teeth checked because there was an assumption that our teeth were falling out.
Yeah. I have pictures here. I want to show them to you one by one and get your reaction to what those pictures mean in terms of your career, your path, and your reaction to them. Okay. So here's the first one. I mean, that was quite a moment.
Ms. Jody Wilson-Raybould, Minister of Justice.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at it, I think about how I felt in that moment, and it makes me a little bit emotional thinking about it. My knees were knocking, I was nervous, and that moment for me, aside from the other person that's in the picture, was obviously an accomplishment, becoming Canada's first Indigenous Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada.
You haven't mentioned the Prime Minister in those words yet when you describe this picture.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, when I think about it, I mean, I'm grateful to Prime Minister Trudeau for putting me in that position and giving me that enormous responsibility to do some good work that I'm proud of. For me, when you show me that picture, I think about my father, and I think about his father, the first Prime Minister Trudeau.
I have 2 children in Vancouver Island, both of whom want to be the Prime Minister.
Tell them I'll stick around till they're ready.
When I think about those 2, I also think about the 2 of us and how far we still have to go to, one, appreciate, but also understand different worldviews.
What is it about different worldviews and reconciliation that we need to better understand?
I speak about needing to understand, or Canadians needing to understand, the true history of Canada and how Canada was formed not on a shared story of all of the diversity between and among us, but was built on a story or worldviews that excluded Indigenous worldviews. A history of denial of rights, a history of assimilation, a history of residential schools. The exclusion of Indigenous peoples and their worldviews has had long-lasting challenges that still face the country today.
All right, I'm going to show you another picture that actually fits in a little bit to that theme from Kamloops.
Yeah, looking at the old residential school in Kamloops, Teshwepik. That was, in the summer of 2021 when, and it's understandable, the revelations about the unmarked burials at a residential school, the 215 individuals that were identified.
My mother went to residential school and she survived, barely.
I believe it was a wake-up call for many Canadians. But here's the challenge, or here's the reality or the problem, is that for Indigenous peoples, we've always known that our children went missing or never came back from residential school. We talk about this between and among us in our communities. So very divergent views or understanding of history between many Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples.
But continue with that. I remember the day that this news started to break.
Human remains found at the site of a residential school in Kamloops, British Columbia.
In the first few hours, I saw some really sharply worded tweets from Indigenous people in particular saying, why is this news? We've known this all along. Those of you who are suddenly shocked by it, you should have known it all along. But then I kind of felt like maybe by the next day, people, including Indigenous people, started realizing, rightly or wrongly, this is changing the conversation in Canada. And so let's in the best possible way, take advantage of that. And I just wondered, do you remember back to that day, you know, did your views of that change, or as you saw how it was changing the conversation in Canada, how did you feel?
Well, I remember the day. I remember when I saw it on social media or on the news, or heard it through various people from Kamloops, actually. Not being too shocked about it, and I think gradually realities of our history will continue to come out more and more. But I appreciated how the conversation changed or evolved to a place where it was about embracing the opportunity but what those learnings, or what we can learn, that's where I was really happy to see the media go.
You've anticipated my last question, but maybe I'll ask it anyway, and that is for people who are watching, particularly non-Indigenous people, what would you like them to do next?
Well, I talk about this in the book, and I speak about, and to answer that question, what can I do to help advance reconciliation? I speak about three things: learn, understand, and act are the lessons or the practices that I want to impart based on my own unique experiences throughout the course of my life and teachings from my ancestors.
And how do you feel about the likelihood of that happening? Optimistic, pessimistic?
I am optimistic. I've seen more change in these last 12 years than I have since I was elected way back when as a regional chief, and when I was growing up. There is more awareness. Canadians care and want to do something.
All right, well, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you so much.